All right. So today what I'd like to do is essentially provide you with some tools and some information that you can walk away with and go back to the faculty members that you're working with and or anyone else that you're training to use Canvas and get them started a little bit quicker than maybe they would otherwise. Now, I'm definitely targeting those of you that are using Blackboard Vista. So that's really the focus. So if you're not working in Blackboard Vista, some of this will be pertinent information, but yeah, I'm really looking at that group. Now, one thing that I want to, if you guys, how many here, just by raise of hands, have already started to migrate courses? Okay, so this next slide will probably make sense in that migrating courses is the most unpleasant thing you could probably go through, as would be itchy underwear. And it is a painful process, and fortunately we don't do it very often, and hopefully we won't have to do it again for a long time, and we'll all stick with Canvas and it will be a fantastic solution for us. At any rate, we do have a very well done solution in Canvas, and if any of you have not yet had a chance to migrate within the past week or so since the most recent update, you will be actually pleasantly surprised by the solutions that they've provided for us. And with that said, what I found in working with Canvas is that we're really all working together, and any feedback that we're providing Instructure is being heard, and it's evident by this last release that we've had with the migration tools. And so I've just been so pleased with that. So where I want to begin with is the notion and the understanding that everyone should have, and you should really let your faculty members know this and everyone, is that we all selected Canvas because it's a better LMS than anything that's out there that we looked at. And that's truly why we're with it. And so there's my little bumper sticker there. Canvas is greater than and not Blackboard Vista. Okay, so really get that across to your faculty that yes, you did go through a selection process and you did find an LMS that is better, but it is different. Okay, it's a very different system. And when it's different, then comes the pain, right? Because that means that there's going to be change. But that's okay. We can embrace change, except in certain circumstances. Because the first thing that your faculty are going to ask, where's the student view, right? Right? If you haven't already experienced that. Okay, so some things will be a little painful, and you're just going to have to bear with it for a while, and perhaps there'll be a resolution that will come with that. However, what really this comes down to is the amount of training that you can provide your faculty and the information and helping them through this process. So a couple of things that I'll be providing for you today. One is you all have on your, hopefully you have on your desk or your chair, you found a little piece of paper. There's a migration sheet. It's this little cheat sheet, and I'll go over how to use this cheat sheet and when you should use it. Now this really is going to become an advanced organizer that you could use, and I've intended for you to be able to use this with any trainings that you have with your faculty members. And then the next thing is really the paradigm shift. And this is where I challenge all of you to begin with your faculty. And first of all, understanding, yes, the LMS is different. It's not Blackboard. And there are some changes, and not only are there some changes, it's a paradigm shift. There's some things that are completely different, a different approach and a different process of teaching and for students and learning with this LMS than with others. And that was very attractive, I know, to UEN and to Utah State University when we looked at it and when they presented it to us of these differences. And so what I challenge you is to help your faculty to embrace this and to be open to these changes. They will find bugs. I'm not going to stand up here and say there aren't bugs in Canvas. That's for the salespeople to do. But what I will tell you is that the differences are to be embraced and they can be useful. So what I have listed here are a list of, well, I think about 7 different items. And I've gathered these from those of our trainers up at Utah State University that have been working with faculty. And these are really sort of the points that I want you to go in with and to understand. And what it will do is a couple things. One is it will help head off problems that your faculty may have in terms of learning this software. And then second is it'll actually make you look pretty smart, because some of these are like you really understand the system. So let me go through these, and they're not really in an order of importance by any means. So one of the first items that faculty seem to have a hard time grasping, or at least they need to know, is how the file system works. So the idea, as I understand, and you could definitely correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the idea is that students, if they're paying for a class and they're taking a class, that they should be able to get the materials and continue to get those materials and have access to them. Okay? So that's not a closed system whatsoever. You know, this doesn't mean that they need to have access to the quizzes and to the answers to the quizzes here on out. It just means they need to have access to the content and the materials. So that changes a little way of how we look at our files. Now in Vista, remember, that was closed to the students. They didn't have access to those files unless you placed them somewhere into the LMS and into a tool. Whereas in Canvas, it is open. It's available unless you choose to lock them or close them. Okay? So that's one of the first things. Just let your faculty know this is available, it's open, and here's why. Okay, it's a paradigm shift, a little different. Now the next thing is the gradebook. So in Blackboard, the gradebook was very independent, more or less, than it was a tool within itself. You could create columns in the gradebook, you could create all sorts of things with the gradebook independent of an assignment or something of that nature. Well, the shift here is that if you have an assignment, well, you're going to have a grade for it, correct? There's usually an association there. So an assignment and the gradebook are one and the same, and they complement one another very much. So some procedures some teaching procedures that happen, for instance, grading. Well, you may enter the grading through the gradebook. So that becomes the assessment manager, and the assignment manager is the gradebook. And when you create an assignment, it creates a column in the gradebook that's all tied together. So it's another little shift. It's different. It's a different way to look at it. Now the next one is email. So communicating with students. And as we know, or may have all been sold on Canvas, this is one of the big selling points, is the communication system and the notification system. Now in this I put notifications, but really the paradigm shift is not the notifications, but it's messaging. So the idea is that when professors are communicating with their students, that they do it through a messaging concept. And that's a little different because we didn't have these tools available to us. We weren't able to message our students on their Facebook account. We weren't able to message students through texts, through email and Twitter accounts. These are now available to us, and it's a messaging protocol. It's a different way to communicate with the students, and can be done in all different facets throughout our course. We could definitely over-communicate things to our students. So the other component of this is, yes, communication and email and mailing is very powerful. And every bit of Canvas's notification system is very powerful. So letting the students know ahead of time and letting the instructors know to let their students know how they plan on using announcements and how they plan on communicating with the students. So setting an expectation. So this paradigm shift is changing, and I'm hopefully will be changing behaviors, teaching behaviors and communication behaviors between students and teachers. Now, the next one is journaling. Now, we get this fairly often. I'd say about every time I teach a class in Canvas is, how do we do journals? How does that work? So we had the journal tool, which was part of the discussion tool in Vista, whereas it's just an assignment and then multiple submissions. So you almost have to think a little bit out of the box and get creative with your assignments, and realize there's some other options with the journaling or with the multiple submissions, and you can see the tracks and make comments. And then that also provides more opportunity for the faculty to provide feedback So this journaling and the multiple submissions in assignments is a fantastic way to communicate to students how they're doing and vice versa. Then, as we saw today, one of the great features, which is how do we podcast? So there was a great podcasting component when we had a Wimba integration in Blackboard, but now it's right in the discussion tool, and you can use those feed. Drawing a blank here. You pull feeds, RSS feeds, thanks, out of a discussion tool and utilize those, and also the media elements that are available within Canvas. So it's just different. And then goals. Who actually used the goal tool in Vista? I'm kind of curious if anybody. One? Okay, I see one in the room here. Okay, I've never actually seen it used in Vista. However, it's a great idea. It's a fantastic idea. And now, is anybody familiar or using outcomes? Raise your hands. A couple, okay? I recommend that everybody learn how to use outcomes. This is an extremely powerful tool. And it's a huge paradigm shift in terms of usability, and it can be used in so many different ways with the administrators on your campus, with departments, even down to the course level. So I highly recommend that you learn how to use that. And then the last one is really, Vista was based on HTML, old standards. It was an older version, it's an older model, essentially, of using the web. Whereas now we've got HTML5 standards that are integrated within Canvas. This opens up all sorts of options and opportunities available that, whether our instructors need to know it, or we as instructional designers or the support staff, can really help and push the teaching opportunities in the environment that their classes are in, leveraging the HTML5 protocols and environment. So the emphasis here is really to start out and let the faculty know, okay, we've got a paradigm shift. There's some differences. It's very similar tools, but you can use them in different ways because they're more powerful in a lot of ways, and they're leveraging new technologies. All right, so now let's get to this handout. So our advanced organizer. So advanced organizers, the whole idea of an advanced organizer is to get on a common ground, to start out with something that's familiar. For those of you that are runners, you think of it as putting on the shoes that you've been running in for the past 200 miles. They feel good, you put them on, you're ready to go, it's good and comfortable. The same with your faculty. Get them going, get them started. And that's what that left column is for on that sheet. Now, what we've identified in the left column is essentially all of the Vista tools that are available. Okay, now some of these are student tools, and most of them are the teaching tools and the building tools. Now, you'll notice that the student tools, nothing really comes across because that's student data and it's student run. At any rate, I wanted to put those in there so that they are available if somebody was familiar with them and had the question, well, what about this tool? So it's in there. The next column was to facilitate the idea or to answer the questions of what are our expectations. So when we migrate, in this migration process, what are your expectations of things actually happening? So in the first column, we saw, okay, we have a home page. Now let's give a couple examples here. The home page, when it's migrated over, comes across, and the first thing that you see is the communication stream. And that can lose people. So, okay, there's a communication stream, but if you had a customized home page, which was a folder in Vista, it became the front page. And the code came across, and that nice customized banner or whatever was placed in there was built in this front page. Okay, so showing the faculty, that's where that went. Announcements are announcements. Assignments, they now come across and they're put into an imported assignment group, but those assignments come across nonetheless. Quizzes come across, but they're unpublished, and it sounds like there will be some changes with that. Is that correct, Bracken?
The assignments and quizzes, and the assignment groups that come in, a little messy, so clean that up so it's less messy.
Right, because we're all in this together, right?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So Bracken's listening to some of our concerns and adjusting the usability. Calendar items, boy, the calendar, that is such a huge selling point. That is a great feature. Who likes the calendar? Yeah, well, everybody that's using it, right? The calendar is great. Okay, but those come across. And so what I've identified in that second column, and you can give this to your faculty, and they can look at, are the expectations. Okay, if I'm bringing over an assignment, it's going to be an assignment. If I'm bringing over grades, it's going to come into grades. Web links are not going to come across as web links. They're going to be placed in a wiki page. Okay, that's a little different. Folders become wiki pages. Learning modules become modules. Okay, so just introducing them and easing them into this transition is the idea of this handout. Okay, so then there's the last part, the last column, and that's really the Canvas way. So that's when you step back and you say, all right, it's a paradigm shift. These are the set of tools that are available. Now, the intent of this is to be able to go back over and correlate. All right, the home page becomes the home page. The announcements become an announcement, and so on and so forth. But you can correlate these. Now, here's a couple things that I would like to highlight here. The calendar, okay, it's the first one. These are items that I bring up with faculty when I'm giving an introduction to Canvas. And the first thing I show them are big wins. So it's kind of like out there fishing. You're dangling the worm, and that you want to set the hook. And the calendar is an easy way to set that hook because it's a huge win. To sit down with them and show them the features of the calendar and show them how quick and easy it is to change the assignment dates. And so having a pre-populated calendar is the way to begin a class, any introductory class. Then the next one is I talk about outcomes and the power of outcomes and how that can be distributed. And it's sometimes it's a little abstract to talk about outcomes. But you can approach it in such a way that it resonates well with the faculty members, and especially if there's any department heads that you're working with in there, and deans. They really get the idea of outcomes, and they buy into that very quickly. And then rubrics. So whenever I talk about outcomes, I pull in rubrics and tie those together. And then I go all the way down to question test banks and how they all work together and how you can share these across departments or in a department across multiple courses. The example I often use is an English 1010 class. How many sections of an English 1010 class are taught in any given institution at any semester? There's at Utah State, I think we have at any given time 10 to 12 classes going. And they still need to adhere to a common outcomes and learning outcomes and goals. And so that resonates well. The next one that I like to show, or sometimes I choose with this, if you've got a group, is the speed grader. And if you have an iPad, if anybody has the iPad 2 or one of those are really handy in the ability to plug that into your projector and show that iPad app. That just sells a speed grader. I think one of our faculty members I've quoted her multiple times saying, "I love the speed grader. I cuddle up with it at night." She absolutely thinks it's the best thing in the world. And it is. It's a great innovation. And it's a fantastic thing to really win our faculty over. So Wiki Pages is another very powerful tool. And that's something that I also like to show faculty members. And I use that really in a lot of ways to exemplify the text editor in Canvas and the strength of the text editor. And even more so in that text editor, the integration with Kaltura. So the ability to just input media. Now, for those that are with UEN, our big concern is how are we going to store all this media that's going to be shoved into the system? That's for those guys to figure out. But it's going to be really cool. Okay? And then, of course, announcements and the notifications. So what I've created for you also, you've got this handout, is if you go to our website, and it's learn-usu.uen.org/courses/45463. Okay, this is just essentially a public course on our domain that we have. And I placed all of these resources for you. So you can download this PDF and you can print them out and adjust them, modify it however you would like, and use that in your classroom. You can, let's see if I can switch over here. May freak out a little bit. Okay, here's the actual site. There's a couple other things that I placed on here for you. There's the conversion handout chart and also a lesson plan. So this is essentially an outline for you of your first introduction, Blackboard or Canvas for Blackboard users. And it goes over really what I've talked about today. The next thing is we had an opportunity to get Devlin up there with us for a few days, and we recorded him on some different topics. And one of the things that one of our instructional designers, George Jekyll, did is he grabbed him and he said, okay, Devlin, what we need is for you to explain the paradigm. We need to get this sort of shift. We don't understand it completely. Give us a viewpoint of where you came from and why you did things. And so we've got them, the open architecture, so why is it open and what's the intent of it, how to use the social networks and what it's being used for, and then this communication paradigm. They're short, they're very useful, and it's just a good leader for anybody that's really asking in-depth questions, they want to know and they want to understand. This is a good way to go. Some other resources that we have in here, there's actually Matt McGee sent this to me. The University of Mary Washington have this Canvas project plan, and it's actually very nicely done, and it's a website, and it's like this, and it has a lot of questions and answers that they're providing their faculty. So that's another resource. And as resources come up, I'll continually populate this. So I'll leave this up there for you. Then what we did is we also grabbed Devlin, because Devlin is so good at understanding the overview, and we had to hold him back from not saying how to do all these different tools, but more so provide an overview of all the different tools in Canvas. And so really, this is a way to start things off. It won't tell somebody how to build quiz questions, but it will give them the idea of how quizzes can be used and the idea and the strength of quizzes. It will talk about learning outcomes, about how to use peer review and so forth. So they're really good videos. We've got links to all of them, and feel free to use all those as you would like. So hopefully this will bring me back to where I was. Okay, so in closing, really I want to emphasize this more than anything, that we are all in this together. This is a different company, and I embrace it full-heartedly in that it's not closed. We're here to share resources. We're here to share what we've learned. And really, I'd like to put a plug in there for the support.instructure.com, their wiki, to be able to contribute to that wiki, because the more that it's populated, the more useful it becomes. We at Utah State will be contributing everything up to this, and hopefully we'll be pulling down from it and linking to it. And now I think, is Allison in the room? Allison, I want you to stand up really quickly. And Allison is new instructional designer, will be overseeing really the components and the resources that are available. So get to know her. And if she has any, or if you have any questions of how to get things into the wiki, please feel free to contact her, not me. So, thank you very much. I hope this is useful for all of you, and I wish you all the best in the hard work and effort that you're going to be going through in migrating over from Vista to Canvas. So, are there any questions? Yeah?
Any particular strategies on how to actually do the migration of the January part?
Yes. So the question was, any strategies to do the migration? Tomorrow morning, Neil Legler from Utah State University will be addressing those very closely. He's been working on. We've recently migrated 300 fully online courses, and we have a goal to get that done by the end of this month for fall semester. But he will be able to answer most of those. But for the most part, if I were to give any quick strategies in the migration process, is to first identify all the courses that you're going to bring over, and then just suck them all over. Just as quick as you just go through and grab every one of them. But be sure that you put them into a sub-account. Don't put them into what's in production, or the course that has enrollments, Because if there are problems, listen, Bracken and those engineers, there's not a course reset or a way to reset course in case you get partial content coming in. Okay, so that's one of the big things. That was an aha moment after we'd migrated about 30 or 40 courses and had problems in migrations and content. So that would be the first strategy. But Neil Legler will be addressing a lot of these and has been dealing with that. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on migrating versus starting from scratch?
Oh, yes.
That was the previous session. They said forget it and start from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, if you have the convenience to start from scratch, I would highly recommend that. And the reason I would is to embracing this paradigm, the change, and being able to leverage the tools for what they are. We unfortunately, we don't have that convenience. We have a mandate to bring over 300 courses, and some of the instructors have no idea that their course is even being brought over. So they'll show up 2 weeks before school and try to go into Blackboard or whatever. I mean, they'll get a notification nonetheless. So I would definitely recommend that, and I think you would get a higher quality course, and it definitely would cut out a lot of the
You have to
junk.
do a lot of tweaking once it's brought over.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of files that come across that you don't need, and there's also that shift in teaching that really is different. So you can start approaching the tools differently and saying, let's do it this way. How do you want to teach it? Oh, great, maybe you want to teach it using the tool this way. Whereas in Blackboard, it was designed for Blackboard. So,
You just
yeah.
swoop back 2 slides. Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
No questions.
no questions. All right. Anyone else with a question?
Well, I was just going to comment on his question. Sorry. So way back in the early days, before we even had migration tools, when I first talked to the first professors that used Canvas, I showed up to their office and they were like, and I was really worried because they had stuff in Blackboard, and I was like, yeah, you're going to have to migrate everything over. And in 20 minutes, this professor had a whole course set up, and it was done in the Canvas way. And it would have been, even with the awesomeness of our migration tools, it would have been a worse course if it was migrated, because it would be the same content migrated perfectly over, but in a different paradigm. So doing it on your own is actually a good idea.
Yeah, that's been my experience, is that I was unable to really get any migration.
Right, so if you are the professor and you have the impetus to do that, do it. But when you're John and you've got to do thousands, you have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to bring over a 20,000 question database, and it was not happening.
Wow, that's the kind of stuff we like to test, though.
Yeah, well, I have to say that I wasn't able to get it into Blackboard 9 either. So.
Fair enough, then. Oh, we have a question there in the back?
Actually, this brings up the question here. Is there a limit on how large the test banks can be? Because like him, I have test banks that large.
Okay, so is there a limit on the size of question test banks? Now, I'm going to defer that to the engineers here. However, before I do, the experience that we've had is that, and this is on the UEN instance, and so I don't know if this holds true for the cloud environment, in that some of our migrations of the larger courses that have large test banks and lots of files, it's timing out. So it's not bringing everything over. Okay, and I think that has a lot to do with the way we have it set up in the UEN instance. But Devlin, could you speak to this? And maybe you speak in the mic there for those that are recording, if you don't mind, please.
I don't think it's working. How's that? Is that working? Okay, a couple of things. As far as I know, I don't know that there's any technical limit on the size of the question banks, although you will find that some of the interface was not designed for 20,000 questions. And so it might be hard to find things, okay, but it might go in. The other part was that you just stated specifically with a WebCT product, and WebCT has no export features. And so Bracken, our ninja over here, he's going to talk about this tomorrow, but he actually gave it export capabilities that it did not have, okay? And so part of the timing out is actually not our system, it's the WebCT system. Okay, and the other one that I just want to talk about really quick was about the bulk migration. Is that, I think, a migration, it's what you make of it, right? It's if you approach it with your faculty that this is going to be terrible and you hate your life, then they're going to approach it the same way. But if you approach it as, oh, this is an opportunity to clean out the course, I mean, you will find faculty that have EPACs, 12 different versions of the same EPAC over the last 15 years, right? And so you mentioned Mary Washington, University of Mary Washington. One thing that they did, I thought, very successfully is that they struck a compromise between the bulk migration and then revisiting a course. And what they did is that they created, the last semester that they taught in Blackboard, they recreated that same term in Canvas, even though no one was teaching it. And then we did a bulk migration of all their courses into that fake semester. So then when the teacher logged in, they would see the semester that they last taught in Blackboard with the course already migrated and the semester that they were going to teach with an empty Canvas course. And they could see exactly how the migration was going to happen, and they could see the mismatch between it, and then they could just selectively pull things across into their new course and then start from there. So that was a compromise, I thought.
Okay. Well, thank you. So we're now out of time, and I guess in closing, really what I should be suggesting to all of you is just go change your underwear, right? Thank you. I appreciate your time.